Oh boy, howdy. Lots of topics today. On today's Kelly and Company, what exactly is a tariff? I know, we're starting out big. Financial planner Ryan Chin, he breaks it down for us shortly with Economics 101. And advocating for access at work can feel so daunting. Jennie Bovard, she's been there and wants to share what has worked for her and what hasn't worked. Sit back all, class is in.
This is Kelly and Company.
Back again for another day hosting on the program. Kelly MacDonald here. Thank you for joining us here on Kelly and Company, where we have a lot of fun, a lot of great conversations. Remember to check out our Kelly and Company podcast. You can do that from your platform of choice. Give us a rating, a review while you're in there. Also, remember to follow us on our YouTube page. Always wonderful places in which to check out the show content. Subscribe if you would, and enjoy all of the things that get placed up there. I'd like to welcome in Lucia Bellafante with me, and of course we're going to talk parenting in a few moments. But Lucia, before we went to air, I asked you to think about one thing, and that was your favorite toy as a kid.
Yeah.
And you kind of said a toy. Well, okay, it's something that's not quite a toy or viewed as a toy. What is it?
That's because the first thing that came to my mind was a book. So, but honestly, there are two. There's a book and a doll. But the book, because we were immigrants and my parents didn't speak the language. And so the idea of having children's books was foreign to them, I think.
Oh, wow.
And I remember my dad bought me this book once. It was a big book of knowledge, it was called, back in the day when they had encyclopedias. I believe it was part of a children's set, but it was the only one I got because afterwards he realized that what came was not a large book, but a little magazine type book. So he canceled the subscription, broke my heart. But I still have that book. It's in my office up on my shelf.
So it was like an edition, right? Like an edition, like the July edition of the Book of Knowledge. Is that kind of what it was?
Oh, I think it was like your bonus book. It was a really thick, like maybe 3.5, 4-inch thick book, Encyclopedia, the Knowledge of Everything for a child.
Wow, that's so interesting, because I gather it was a combination of questions that you would ask as a kid, or just little things of knowledge. Yeah. And I remember watching TV, and they used to always have door-to-door encyclopedia salesman.
Yes.
Which is crazy, right? They would talk to you about it, convince people to buy the dictionary or an encyclopedia. Yeah. This is a 28-volume encyclopedia, your Britannica and blah. And people really bought and invested in these. I had an Oxford dictionary somebody gave me, and I remember it was published in 1957 in Braille, and I'm counting in my head here how many darn volumes were there. I believe it was 14 or 16 Braille volumes, and each volume was about 4 inches thick. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it was insane. It really was, and I don't even remember how I got rid of it, but I had to. My toy, believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, were car parts. When my dad would work on the car, I would assist. It was my job. I was fascinated by cars, and anything he took off to replace a thermostat or whatever it might have been became something in my toys. And, my mom would give me that, because, of course, you had to clean it and stuff like that, and I would love it. Or I'd come to the table with my greasy fingers and get down there to the bathroom and wash up. But I loved all these old little car parts. And where he would also go to get work done, the fella who ran this garage had a car that was sitting out on the lot. And he'd give me the keys and let me go and get in the car and pretend I was driving it. And he would say, "That's Kelly's car."
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, I do too, Lucia, but you and I both know, everyone listening who's old enough to say, you can't do that anymore. There are so many reasons why not. We don't even need to go there, ladies and gentlemen. I just, wow. Okay, Lucia, let's build on the wellness journey that you helped us start last month here on the program when we covered 3 broad areas to think about when we're focusing on mental health. Today, we have a bit of a twist. So I'm curious, what's the twist?
The twist is we are going to discuss micro moments.
Okay.
A micro moment. Do you want to know what that is?
Yeah, I mean, I have some kind of idea, which means I need the right idea.
I love it. So really, a micro moment is just like a brief, focused experience, anywhere from 30 seconds to 5 minutes, where you're taking the time to return to your body, return to your breath, and feel a little bit centered.
Okay. So
That's it.
It's not necessarily an experience in the same way of something happened. I want you to note this was a good thing, an interaction, or something like that. This is far more like a personal, like some would say, taking moments to breathe, or like somebody who sits back and goes into a bit of meditation. This is different, but along those lines.
It is. It is along those lines. And the first thing we're going to talk about is the 3-2-1 grounding technique. And I like this one because with all of the strategies or suggestions that we'll talk about today, they will help to calm down the fight or flight response, right? The stress response that we can somehow have. They can help to regulate your nervous system and help calm not only the body, but also your mind. And they can help you feel anchored. So all of the 3 suggestions will do that. However, when we think of the 3-2-1 grounding technique, what it is you spend a moment, and now depending on where you are, so if you're somewhere private, you could extend it a little bit more, and you'll understand once we talk. If you're at work and you need to do it, you just adjust accordingly. But the first activity is that you find 3 things that you can either look at or hear and focus on those for a moment. That's it.
Okay.
Simple.
Okay.
3 things
that you could look at, hear,
or hear.
Not touch necessarily, mainly
not yet.
Using the eyes or the ears. And they could be anything. They could be your water cooler. They could be the clock ticking. Yeah. Okay. All right. Next.
And the reason you're doing that is you're shifting your focus, right?
Right.
You're focusing on something else externally from you. And by doing that, you're calming the mind. And in case you were having some looping thoughts that you didn't want to have, focusing and shifting your focus to something will then stop those thoughts momentarily. Gives you a break.
Okay. Right.
So
okay.
3 things to look at
important.
or hear. Yeah. And the next one is 2 things that you can touch. So even if you are, if you're at work and that you're at your desk, even just touching 2 things that feel slightly different, and then just focus on that feeling. What is it feeling like? Are they warm? Are they soft? Are they hard? How is it making you react when you touch them? Like if you're cold and you're touching something cold, you would rather touch something warm. Just kind of paying attention to how you're feeling when you touch those 2 objects.
So if I do that, okay, first I did the first exercise, tried to find those 3 things, and a little more difficult, obviously, because we're having the conversation. I can hear the rain in behind you. I can hear the wind.
Yes.
And just the sound of the room, even with my headsets on. Now I'm touching my desk, which I sit in front of, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm touching the tray, the metal of the tray that my keyboard is on. And I'm pulling it out, and the thing I noticed, as you said, feel the difference, the texture, note something.
Yeah.
The rails of the tray, the track is colder than the desk.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's it.
All right.
Simple, right? We can all do that. And then the last thing is 1 thing that you can either hear or smell. That's it. 1 thing that you hear or smell.
Just 1
thing,
we
want to be inclusive. Just 1 thing. So it's going like 3, 2, 1. Getting you used to doing something different. Yeah.
And of course, for me, it's the wood of this desk I smell. Okay.
Lovely. Yeah, and that's it. And I do want to say before we continue is that, we're talking about this right now as the adult or as the parent, but these are lovely techniques that as a parent you can also do with your child at the same time, or you can then teach them to your child so they can do them whenever they need to. So I just wanted to,
and obviously it's a private thing, so it's not like the child has to, you know what I smell now, or this is what I feel like I was just doing to account for it, kind of for my own reasoning of it. Okay, perfect.
Yeah, absolutely. The next one, anchoring statements. I love anchoring statements. An anchoring statement is something that begins with I am. So I am calm, I am enough, I am powerful, I am smart. Those are just some ideas. You can use whatever statement feels right for you.
So again, as an adult, if we start figuring these things out a little bit more than probably we should, because you're thinking how useful and powerful this is for a child. So do you utilize things as even, I'm happy, I'm sad?
Yes.
It doesn't have to be something like that. Like you said, it could be, I am a well-organized person.
Absolutely. So I would suggest, because what we're trying to do is an anchoring statement to calm our mind and our body, to keep it in the positive. And even if you don't believe it 100%, research has shown that if you use a positive statement in the present, what happens is, if you're repeating it to yourself with as much emotion, so even if you're repeating it to yourself mentally, you're not saying it out loud, right? Your subconscious begins to believe that statement if you say it with emotion, feeling, and you kind of attach like something positive. So I would say, let's say, for example, I wanted to say, I am enough. I would personally think of a moment where I connected with my child or children, and it was a good, happy moment, and it made me feel great as a parent. And so because you're thinking about something that did give you pleasure, did bring you joy, while you're saying, I am enough, that helps internally for the subconscious mind to accept that statement, internalize it, so that then you begin to believe it more and more. Isn't that beautiful?
As opposed to, I need to do better.
Yeah. Or I'm not enough, or I'm not perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, because we get into that space of the negative talk, the negative idea. If you say something to somebody, they're going to become that. If it's a negative and you say, oh, you're this or you're that, and it's negative, we start to make that happen. And that obviously is equally just as for sure if we're saying it to ourselves about ourselves. Okay. Yeah. I really like that. And I think of goals at work, when you set your goals and you looked at, hey, meets expectations, still needs work, or exceeds expectations. If you have things like that, because you're talking at that moment where you're at, that ongoing goal of life, these many things that we have, and we're working in progress. And there are times, where I need to get back to doing more work on that, whether it's maybe a diet or watching your weight or getting out more or getting a little better at your organization, whatever it might be. All right. Very good, Lucia. Excellent.
Yeah. And so again, I want to remind everyone that this is something they can teach their children, right? And you can do this in your mind. So they could do this at school when they're upset or before a test. They could always say to themselves, I am smart. I am capable. Oh, can you hear the thunder?
Yes, I did. Well, like I said, I've been commenting on that rain, but we know that's all coming in. But it's what a wonderful sound, right? If you don't mind thunder and lightning.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah. For some people, it can be triggering, but hopefully it's not too obstructive. Well, let's move on to the next thing. So just like today, because my office is outside, because it's private and no one can disturb me, you can hear the rain. And so sometimes I feel, oh my gosh, this is not the perfect setting. So we're going to talk about letting go of perfect.
Okay. All
letting
right.
go of perfect. And in particular, even as we talk about self-care or these micro moments, we might see or hear other things about other people who are doing things that we interpret as perfect. So you might be on social media and somebody has posted something about having a bath for their calming moment. And it's this beautiful, luxurious bathroom, and the bath is big and it's got bubbles, and there's live plants and candles and fresh flowers, and you're thinking, oh my gosh, my bathroom's nothing like this. Right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
But one, that might not be their reality. It just might be a background. And two, it doesn't matter. Remind yourself, it doesn't matter. Your moment is your moment. It's what you bring to yourself, and it's important no matter where you are or how you do it. And so if we can let go of that idea that, our wellness or self-care has to be perfect and has to be grand, and it will help us to relax. It will also help us to connect a little bit more. And that moment might simply be, as a parent, you stand and take a sip of water and observe your child quietly playing. How beautiful.
Lucia, do we fall into any
Yes.
danger as a child, as a parent, teaching that child, accept, be appreciative? We want people to be appreciative. We want you to learn how, wow, we're very fortunate. We're blessed for what we have, however you wish to look at it. But then we get worried that if we accept, these are your grades, this is what, these are good, but how hard is that for people to manipulate? We talk about something like this and looking around and I'm pleased with what I have. I accept. But there's always that feel that so many of us get somewhere of, I've got to do better. I've got a beautiful place, or I've got this, I've got great children. Oh, they've got to be better. Unfortunately, some people fall into that. But how careful do we have to be at those formative years with that?
I think we need to be really mindful, right? And it's a very complex question that we could talk about for days, never mind just a
Yes.
few moments. But we need to be mindful. And what we're saying when we're talking about gratitude is we're not saying that we're going to accept behavior, whether it's from ourselves or someone else, that we consider to be substandard or hurtful, or we don't try our best. I don't think that's what gratitude is about, or understanding that we are already abundant and enough. Right? It's different. And explaining that to a child can be complex. But as a parent, I think the best way to go about it is by embodying that yourself, like practicing that yourself. So let's say, for example, you're washing dishes, which could be a chore. You're doing them by hand. But if in that moment your child is with you and you say, I feel so grateful and so lucky that I have dishes to wash, that I have water to clean the dishes with, that we have dish soap, that I am in a home. That to me is gratitude. And you're saying that out loud.
Yeah.
And so the child can, when you do that repeatedly, they begin to understand the difference between accepting a behavior that's not acceptable and then accepting that gratitude for what you have. Does that help?
And it's the most casual way to do it, isn't it? You're just doing it,
is.
which makes that child stop and say, yeah, we are lucky. Yeah. And you hopefully appreciate. So when one slips out of your hand and breaks you, for more than, now I have to clean this mess up. It's the, I appreciated these. And, this is for the home.
Yeah.
Okay, Lucia, where do you want to go now?
Do we have time to do like a mini breathing?
Yeah, I'd like to.
Moment?
I'd like to. I think this is really important if we could.
Absolutely excellent. All right. So
I'll let you guide us here.
Sure, unless you're in a car. But even if you're in a car, you can breathe. However, you don't have to do anything else. You're just going to take a moment and listen to my voice. And take in a nice, slow breath in through your nostrils. Hold 1, 2, 3, and now exhale gently through your mouth. We're going to do that again. Inhale through the nostrils. Hold 1, hold 2, Hold 3. Exhale through the mouth. Lovely. Now for the third time, I want you to bring to mind something simple that brought you joy this week or even for the first part of today. Something that has brought you joy, something that makes you smile. It could be simple as a scent that you like or a smile from your child. Now I want you to think of that, and as you're thinking, take in one deep breath in. Think, relax, let it warm your heart, let that memory land, and now exhale. And there you go. We just created a beautiful micro moment.
That is wonderful, Lucia. Of course, just beautiful. And such great advice and something so easy to do. Yes. And I gather something that a lot of people get much benefit multiple times a day doing that, as well as those things that we appreciate. Yep. Thanks a lot, Lucia.
Anytime. You're very welcome.
Lucia,
have a blessed day.
You too. Stay dry. We'll do this again next month when Lucia joins us, when we do a little more wellness and, of course, our parenting chat, folks. We are looking for members of the disability community to join our AMI research panel. Our research panel guides us with every decision that we make at AMI, including programming, media consumption, and, of course, accessibility. Participants are compensated for all long-form studies. If you'd like to get more information, we might want to join and get really involved. Go to ami.ca/panel. We'd absolutely love to have you on board. And if you wouldn't mind, Nisreen puts a lot of work into our social media account, folks. A lot of things she gets up there and likes to interact with you. So follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Kelly & Co. AMI. That's on Instagram. That's on Twitter at Kelly & Co. AMI. And keep up with our YouTube page as well and follow the podcast. Well, it is that day, ladies and gentlemen. Middle of the week, Wednesday? Yeah. Oh, you know all that. However, there's also nothing more contentious in our world right now than the talk of tariffs. They've been around for as long as people have been trading overseas and around the world. And to this day, economists debate their exact effectiveness on economic growth. So, what are tariffs and how do they work? Financial planner Ryan Chin from Sun Life has us covered today. Excuse me, Ryan. We have been hearing the word tariffs bantered around so much in the news that it's almost become a buzzword. So, Ryan, welcome back. What is a tariff?
Well, Cal, it's Liberation Day.
Yes,
it's
Liberation
Day.
Yes. In the Rose Garden.
Today, 4 p.m. I hope you've got your...
I wonder if he'll have that music. Did you ever promise me a rose garden, that song from the 70s? Maybe he'll, maybe in his head, that's what it is.
It could be. Or maybe he's going to play some Guns N' Roses just to rattle it up a little.
We know he likes borrowing the music of groups and that without their permission and associating, and sometimes they love it, sometimes they don't.
Sometimes they don't. And that's why we all go to the YMCA. Anyways, but Cal, what is a tariff? Like in its very simple form, a tariff is a tax that is imposed by one country on another. So this last number of months, we've been hearing lots of news about President Trump feeling he wants to make America great again, and all of the unfair tactics that other countries has imposed on the United States. And he's just sort of drawing a line in the sand to simply say, we're going to impose this tax on all of these goods. A very simple explanation on what is a tariff. It's a tax imposed on one country for the import of those goods to boost domestic spending. So, for example, if we here in Canada were to impose a tax on Japanese cars coming in, well, maybe Canadians might want to support domestically built cars versus the Japanese cars because they'd be a little bit cheaper. So that's the whole sort of premise around a tariff. What is a tariff? And it's really just to make domestic goods more appealing to the country, to their domestic country, the country that you're in, versus imported goods.
So we need to understand, because I know this has been the huge confusion of people, within the country. And of course, when we hear Mark Carney and him talk about how strategic you have to be with these, it has really left a lot of people confused. They just see that, hey, prices are going to go up. And we seem to have sort of not quite ever understood that, well, yeah, these things come in, you're paying more from it. And that money collected is going to go to supporting, because we have to do this, because we shouldn't do this. Canada, Mexico, United States, a bit of a different cat to figure out because of our free trade and that's gone on and what we're seeing in this attack. But when we look around, and at any time, Ryan, tariffs are always being used. There is goods you're paying for now and have forever that you pay that we pay tariffs on, to kind of counterbalance the fact we're not buying domestically. Am I correct?
Absolutely. I mean, dead on. And companies, large companies, in fact, build in a certain level of, I'll call it tariff adjustment,
Right,
in
protections
their
almost.
pricing. Yeah,
Yes.
exactly. A tariff protection in their regular pricing, as they're trading goods. I mean, in that buffer, we'll call it, in that buffer, I mean, it's going to result in profit on the days tariffs are low, or should that tariff not be imposed. But in those times where those tariffs are applied, well, that just takes a little off the table for that supplier and or the purchaser.
Okay. All right. And I think about it because, you start thinking, how long have you paid for them? They've been around forever. For as far as we're concerned, in our lifetimes, these have always happened, whether it be on electronics back in the 70s, 80s, whatever. Are there different types of tariffs?
Yeah, and this is truly where sort of rubber's going to hit the road today at 4 p.m. There are specific tariffs and ad valorem tariffs. Boy, what a big word.
Oh, yeah.
And the easy way to use that word is reciprocal tariffs. And you'll hear that word more in the media, reciprocal versus the ad valorem tariffs. So specific tariffs are exactly what we were just talking about, Cal, is, if we're trading a good, on that particular item, the tariff is set. It's a fixed tariff. For example, if we were, bringing in Swiss watches, for example, and, that tariff is just a fixed tariff on that particular item, and it is what it is. That company, again, as we mentioned, builds in a bit of a buffer for those times where that tariff, if there were an adjustment to that tariff. Ad valorem, or what they call reciprocal tariffs, is sort of where President Trump is leaning into, because I'll say his pronouncements is that countries have been applying a tariff on imported goods to the United States. So then the United States should reciprocate by meeting their tariff or exceeding their tariff, over to whatever there is. Those ad valorem or reciprocal tariffs are usually abolished or erased when we think about the free trade, and that's why Canada, Mexico, U.S. have a free trade agreement, because we're saying, hey, look, we realize we need to have some tariffs. We realize we need to, impose some sort of trade tax. We got to get some money in to our economy. But between the three countries, because we're so interconnected and we want to help each other as countries, let's waive some of these reciprocal tariffs between us so that, there's freer trade. We'll help you, you help us. And that is where, now Canada, more specifically, I mean, we export 80% of our goods to the United States, and that's a lot.
Yeah.
And if tariffs really come into play, it will absolutely affect our Canadian economy. So it's a matter of, is this a trade tactic? Is it a negotiation tool? Or are we in an all-out tariff war here? And that's where we kind of fall into these which type of tariff is more appropriate in this situation.
Well, I mean, utilizing the tool of the fentanyl coming across the border, putting it into an emergency, we know that that's not necessarily a general run-of-the-mill reason to do this. So if we look at the European Union, we look around the world at other trading partners of our country, of the U.S., what would you say the most common purpose is? Kind of what you defined right here now, equal tit for tat because of economy.
I mean, that's what's happening here. Or sorry, I shouldn't say that. I shouldn't say it so definitively, but that's what we feel is happening, right?
Here, I feel like the sheriff of Nod is coming around collecting, duties, right?
and let's think about that. I mean, exactly. Let's think about that. I mean, the bottom. What tariffs do is it allows governments when used as a political tool, it allows governments to remove taxes on one area because they're receiving it from another. So there's a perceived, benefit to the citizens in that, hey, we're going to not tax you so much in areas of purchasing goods, maybe in areas of your income. One in the United States is they removed all taxes on tips for service workers,
Right.
and that's a very announced a removal of tax. And on the other side, the corresponding income, because now that's a big debit, right? If they're not getting the income on the tips, there's a tax shortage, an income shortage to the government. So how are they going to make up the difference? By applying an additional tariff to countries who are bringing things into the United States. So right there is sort of an offsetting. I'll use the word value, but is it a true value? Because what ultimately happens when we're adding taxes or tariffs on those imported goods, we're literally just feeding that purchase onto the consumer.
Mm-hmm.
Companies want to make money, sir.
Well, and I get if you want to try to bring business back, you want to protect the domestic. What we're talking about today is potentially, in some countries' cases, doing this to the 10th power, and it's just going to create havoc everywhere. Even though you have that right, you want to collect your fees and make your money because to keep promises and stuff like that. Okay, so as we move forward, as we start thinking more and more what's going to happen, how do we make, or in this case, is there a way in normal cases, how do they make decisions on what we're going to put tariffs on? How do they decide?
Yeah, now, I mean, it's in this particular circumstance, this is very driven by one particular individual. And that is not a norm in the sort of, I'll call it global trade world. Normally, it's a parliamentary decision. The in the United States, they have the Fed, which is their sort of uh, financial instrument here in Canada. Bank of Canada. In the UK, it's the Bank of Europe and European Bank, I should say. Sorry, they will make decisions on those sorts of trade agreements. And the other one is sort of national security. And the national security piece would be, if they felt that someone was taking advantage of a good or service that they would harm the country, then again the national security piece. That's what's happening right now in the United States, where that steel import, they're saying that is that they're putting those tariffs on the steel because due to national security, which I will say that the folks at the national security desks are kind of scratching their head a little bit, saying, "Well, I don't know quite. This may be a liberal use of that power." Um, you know, all of this said, I mean, what we really need to do as consumers, we sit back, we watch, we try to understand.
Mm-hmm.
The decisions that are going to be made today will be pronouncements. There's nothing saying that what's going to be rolled out today is forever.
Correct.
These all may be simple negotiation tools or tactics where next week, maybe our prime minister will sit at the table with President Trump and come to a agreement around the trade, what is to be traded, and what type should it be, more of a specific or a reciprocal tariff, and or should that tariff be increased or decreased based on those items. So like now those negotiations will begin because we don't know right now. There's a lot of uncertainty, and to boil it down to sort of my nuts and bolts, markets do not like uncertainty.
Mm-mm.
They like certainty. Every morning you're going to have your black coffee and read your newspaper. That's
And
certainty.
Weep. Yeah. And weep though if you're playing around with the market. It's again, Ryan, we can stop and say all this needed was being called to the table. It's the United States. That's all it needed is we need to renegotiate. We're not satisfied. We're not happy. I'm not happy. And no matter what you feel like, well, you're not. You're the one that negotiated this. Why aren't you? You're just going to say as a country, as Canada, as so many other places in the world, oh, well, what can we do to make you happier? And
well, that's all. Sorry,
really
Cal,
needed.
just to cut you off, but that's what's happening now is that knee-jerk reaction. But
Mm-hmm.
if you go back to what you were originally saying, Cal, every country wants to work together and wants to bolster up or build up other countries. There's no countries that are arguing with each other. They weren't, but now the elbows up, as it were.
Yep. And people are
and
afraid.
and people are afraid.
Yeah. When this all started, it was just sad to see us. Oh, no, shove Mexico under the bus. No, like that's just like, guys, but we're in a panic. We're fearful. Yeah, I get that. But wow, it's amazing what it does, what it makes us panicky, scared, as you say, about the markets everywhere you look around, Ryan. And hopefully this is the lead to conversations, but we also know this is also what's going to go on. No one's able to predict. And there's an intention to that, and all we can do is what we can do in our yard. So far.
That's true. And you know what, though? This too is a moment in time. And we are, I mean, tariffs have always been around. There's been trade wars before. There's been upset around this before. And it does lead to a better world or a better outcome at the other end of the rainbow, but we just got to work through it, and that's where we're at. We're just going to work through it over the next number of months, and here we are.
Go through the pain. Thanks, pal.
We'll see you next time.
You betcha, man. Reach Ryan directly at Sun Life to talk more about financial planning. You can send him an email, ryan.chin@sunlife.com, and he'd absolutely love to talk with you. Just take that time, drop in an email. And to learn more about financial literacy, subscribe to the AMI original podcast, Eyes on Your Money with Ryan and Becky. Okay? Really great podcast. Lots of great information there. Folks, you can email us if you have questions for Kelly and Company at Kelly kellyco@ami.ca. kellyco@ami.ca. We'd absolutely love to hear from you. You can call us too and leave us a message. Maybe you would rather ask your question that way. 1-866-509-4545. So advocating for access at work can feel quite daunting. Jennie Bovard has been there and wants to share what has worked for her and what hasn't. Jennie, welcome back to the show. How are you today?
I'm doing great, Kelly. Happy spring. How are you?
Yes. It feels like it here. Okay, I'm lying a bit. It's a bit cold, so it still feels like the like November cycled around. But in a couple hours, it'll just be rain. So that'll be more like the April showers we're expecting. But we're doing good here. What's it doing there? Were you guys not expecting some of this stuff too in some form?
We just had the regular old Halifax rain and wind storm yesterday. Was nothing really special for us. We hunkered inside a little bit. Today it is super sunny and clear, but it's chilly. It's like winter. I had the hat and the gloves and everything on this morning. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, I always
but when
have the
you're in
hat
the
on
sun,
now.
it's all right. When you're in the sun, it's all right. We take those
that's
small
good.
wins.
See, this is good when it clears up enough and you can darn well get on a tandem and have some fun. So I know you enjoy that, and it's coming, right? It's like days away.
Yes, you're speaking my language, my friend. The tandem
there
is
you
my
go.
language.
Yeah, love it. After about 2 decades working in a variety of settings, what has been your experience, Jennie, asking for workplace access?
Well, now I'm kind of regretting not coming on here and talking about tandem bikes in the spring, but maybe next time we can do that.
You bet. Your choice.
This topic is top of mind for me right now. And I wanted to just sort of get this discussion out there because I feel for some reason, while workplace accommodations, workplace access, obviously, it can be a confidential thing. It's an individual thing, but I think we need to talk more about it. And I do also think, before we go any further, participating in the workforce, Kelly, I think it should come with like a big fat warning label that says results may vary.
I'm going to ask you first,
yeah,
because I'm curious. Without getting into it, I mean, you can obviously get into it as much as you want. Why is this particularly a hot button right now?
Well, it's top of mind for me right now because I've had a lot of work experience in the past, about 2 decades of experience in a lot of different work environments. And right now I'm going through the workplace accommodation, workplace access ask process with one of my employers. And it is a new experience for me, which at this age, sometimes we don't expect to encounter. You think you've sort of got it all figured out by this age and with all this experience, but I'm encountering something totally new where a new requirement for my job has come forward, and it's to meet the needs of the people that we're serving, and that it all makes sense. But in order for me to do these new job requirements autonomously and effectively and in an equitable way, my employer and I are it's new to both of us, apparently. It's new to me. Didn't know if it'd be new to the employer, but it's a whole new learning process. And I'm leaning on what I knew in the past, what I've learned from the past, rather. And I'm really leaning heavily on all the supports and people and resources. I've encircled myself with support to get through it. So I wanted to talk about, again, results may vary because even if you think you know what your needs are and you know your rights and you know how the process should go and you're doing everything right, you're doing it by the book, Kelly, the results might vary. And that's been my experience throughout the years. I've had discouraging experiences sort of out of the gate when I first entered the workforce, to virtually seamless, lovely, positive, easy experiences accessing my work and getting what I need to be successful, all the way to a human rights complaint situation. And that was back in the past. And there was a positive resolution for that.
So what makes it vary, do you think? Is it at your end? Is it at the employer's? Is it because we're so individual and the circumstances? Is it within the laws?
The laws exist. The duty to accommodate is there to protect us so that we are not left out of the workforce. But the numbers speak otherwise. I would like to remind us all that employment rates for Canadians with disabilities back in 2023, the rate was only 47% of persons with disabilities were employed, compared to close to 70%, 66.9% of Canadians who don't live with a disability, they were employed. So close to 70%. And when we flip that number around, Kelly, you probably know this, something close to 70% of Canadians who are blind and have sight loss are unemployed. So only about 30% of us, ooh, that's a lot of math for me. Only about 30% of us are employed full-time as people who are blind and visually impaired. So I'm fortunate to even be talking about this and all of my experiences. It's not the setting, Kelly. I've worked in so many different settings, contact center, customer service. I've been a barista. Man, I loved being a barista. If only it paid all my bills. I've done admin.
But it's fun, right? It can be fun.
Oh, God, so much fun. Leadership roles. You know, I've been in roles in front of the camera, and it's not the environment. I think at the end of the day, it comes down to the employer, their understanding of how to interpret the duty to accommodate and how they have been taught and how they understand how to respond to a request. Because a request can come verbally, it can come in writing, it can become very formal. You know, I showed up to my very first job interview. It was for over the phone customer service. And Kelly, they handed me a paper application. And I was not able to access this paper application.
Yes.
So I offered to enlarge it. This was 20 years ago. Okay. It was on a piece of paper. We were still using photocopiers. I offered to enlarge it myself. And I tried my best to convince the employer I was capable of doing the job. But they came right out and asked me, if you can't see this application to fill it out, which, by the way, had the tiniest, most unclear print known to humankind. If I can't see this, how could I possibly do the job that I'm applying for?
Because they're getting a snapshot in a moment of one thing, and they draw that to the conclusion of, you know, it would be like if you said, hey, you know, I need a drink of water. Where's the bathroom? How are you going to ever find a bathroom working here if you, you know, due to your vision, if you can't? Some people, they take it to that. They take it to the 10th level for some reason, in the fears of an overreacting too, because, well, I'm going to work here. I'm going to figure out my systems if you give me the opportunity. It's not there. Jennie, also, I kind of wonder for some of us, we'll say, hey, you know, how much of your work has been in the disability community? And, you know, at first you say, that doesn't matter. It's still been work. I've worked. But I think on the one level, if we're not out there able to be in the mainstream, I'm just going to use that terminology to get through what I'm trying to say or bring up. We don't have these experiences where employers, oh, well, you know, someone was here with a disability before. I know where to go. I at least ask questions. I know I can't treat everybody the same because everyone's an individual, whether you have a disability or you don't, whatever, where a lot of us don't appear that number, 30% in the low vision blind community. Some would say, well, are so many of us working within the community, the organizations within the community, that we're not able to be out there advocating and laying out things a little bit more clear for the people that are hiring in mainstream? I don't know how much truth there is to that.
I think what you're saying makes a lot of sense, but I would challenge and say that when you are someone, I started out in what we would, I guess, call mainstream, or, you know, not working in organizations or for employers that really had any reason to understand disability and how to, and what day-to-day life is like, and what our abilities truly are, right? And it comes back to unknowns, right?
Yes.
If the employer is not doing their responsibility and their due diligence to understand what's expected of them when someone asks for workplace accommodations. I hate calling it accommodations because it's not special.
Yes,
it's not an accommodation. It's just access.
Right.
But at the end of the day, it's the employer's responsibility. And for me, that's what it comes down to is the employer has to understand their responsibility. We as the employee, understand our needs to the best of our abilities and be willing to collaborate and problem solve and figure things out along the way. And I think what happens is I have worked in many organizations that serve a population that have disabilities or that are blind and visually impaired. And I think that doing that has not taken me away from changing attitudes in, let's say, conventional or mainstream workplaces. I think that a lot of us who go to those organizations, we go there with a purpose because we've picked up this knowledge along the way. We know what duty to accommodate is. We see what the problems are, and we want to help by giving back and by supporting and changing those attitudes, perhaps with the power that comes along with being part of those organizations, if any of that makes sense. But again, it comes back to that self-advocacy and that resilience. It is daunting to ask to self-advocate for many people. And it's a real skill that comes with experience. And even again, if you know everything, it can still be a challenge. So knowing your rights, knowing what you need to be successful in certain workplaces, I know exactly what I need. But right now, like I said, I'm in a position where I don't know what to do with this new job requirement. It's new, and we are very much problem solving along the way. So coming back to self-advocacy, one of those key things within there is who can help me with this? And it's so key to know that we're not alone in this endeavor. If you are looking for work as a person with a disability, or if you're in the workforce now as a person with a disability, your access solutions might be, for me, as simple as magnification software and some dim lighting, but it could be bigger than that. And there are resources to help us figure out those needs and communicate those needs with our employers and make these requests formal and push them along so we don't fall through the cracks and become part of that, remain or become part of that 70% who are unemployed. I've encircled myself with so much support, Kelly. I'm accessing services from employment program for persons with disabilities. They have someone who's a navigator who's helping me make sure that I'm making the right choices and saying the right things and following the right processes. They've also secured for me funding to get an occupational therapy assessment. Again, I don't really know what my needs are in this new situation. Vision loss rehabilitation is helping me out in a big way, and so is CNIB Advocacy, my medical doctors as well, because when things get real formal and you're asking for specific things that are perhaps going to cost an organization money, sometimes they want diagnoses, sometimes they want documentation. So all of these resources, I'm tapping into them. Even though I feel like I'm someone who's really great at self-advocacy and I know what my rights are, things don't always go as straightforward and as smoothly as we would hope. And that's why, Kelly, I wanted to talk about this, because the more I talk with my peers, people who are blind, who are new to the workforce or who have been in the workforce for many years, we are finding so much common ground because I've been open about this with them. And I want to know what their experiences have been and take from what's worked for them. And how can this look? How can the access look? Because I don't always have all the answers, even though I would like to think that I do.
Yeah, but you know what? And people will say, well, don't you know from all this time? That is something for them to say, wow, she's had the experience, but she has surrounded herself with all the places to turn to get answers because everything changes. It's long are the days gone, I hope, where you go into a college course, have to teach the teacher how to teach you, go and get a job and have to teach everyone in there as well as advocate, because so many people get a disability later in life, and the last thing they want to be doing is explaining themselves, advocating for themselves. They just want to return as soon as possible to life. But unfortunately, just at any point in life, you might be called upon to advocate, to speak up for yourself, and be asked, well, if I want to work out this with you and we want to get around this, where do we go? And you still need those resources, and certainly have to sometimes say, look it, man, I don't know, but I'll find out, or I know who to go ask. Awesome, Jennie.
Absolutely. And we have to be resilient when these things happen. Sometimes it means doubling down and figuring out the problem. And sometimes it means you've taken yourself and your employer as far as you can go, and maybe then it's time to move on. But that's a whole other conversation. That's a whole other consideration. Just know that you're not alone.
Yes,
yeah, that's
we'll get
right.
into that after tandems in the spring. Thanks, Jennie, of course.
Pleasure always, Kelly.
Jennie Bovard joining us here, visits with us once a month right here on the program. So we'll catch her next month. Some absolutely amazing words of wisdom, but backed with experience and the knowledge of when she needs to know, hey, man, I need to ask a question here, or hey, they can help out. All those resources, keeping them at your fingertips, folks. On our next edition of Kelly and Company, Chef Mary Mammoliti is going to remind us we need to be able to eat locally and, of course, seasonally. She's got us covered with what produces and what is available, what is produced in Ontario and what is available in Ontario, and the benefits of choosing those fruits and vegetables. We'll get into that conversation on the Thursday edition of Kelly and Company. Fedora's off to you, ladies and gentlemen. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks for tuning in to Kelly and Company. Follow us on all social media, and don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more.